Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I always dreamed of the day that I'd be invited back to Heritage to speak in chapel. I always thought all those big preachers that would come back, were so fantastic because they would have the honor, and these were certainly the best of the best. And then when I came and realized I was invited back, I realized they'd just have anybody. But I am certainly thankful to be here this morning. It's good to see Patrick. He has spent numerous years with me up in Castle Rock, so it is nice to see him once again. It's certainly good to see a lot of the old friends and faces and relationships to reconnect with you. So certainly glad to be here. The book of James is the junk mail of the New Testament. It has been the junk mail of the New Testament for years, and it all started in 1517 when Martin Luther nailed those 95 theses in a church in Wittenberg in Germany called the Castle Church, and it launched the Reformation. He was very upset with the Catholic principles, and he was essentially upset with this idea of indulgences, paying for the opportunity to commit sin. But in this process, he felt that the Catholic Church was putting too much emphasis on works and not on grace. But there is this one issue with James chapter 2, verse 14. In this verse, it said something about you needed to work for your salvation. And Martin Luther did not like that one single bit. So he called the book of James the Epistle of Straw, and he wanted it to be removed from the New Testament canon. But he really missed the book of James' intentions, because that's really not the most controversial text in the book of James. If there was a text in the book of James that we would want to cast out today, it would be the beginning of the book. James chapter 1 verses 1 to 4. That would be the text that we would like to nail to a church building and say, let's forget about. But unfortunately, it is in the New Testament, and those verses are very powerful because they talk about true discipleship. If you look at the book of James, it is really parallel to the Sermon of the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 to chapter 7. And almost every single theme in the book of James was already mentioned by Jesus in this famous sermon. Let's look at our text this morning as we learn about what it's like to be a true disciple of Jesus Christ and look at these controversial texts in the Bible. James chapter 1 verses 1 to 4 says this: James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes of the dispersion, greetings. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. James begins with noting who he is, that he is James. But he does not pull the power trump card in this text. A lot of people believe that James, the brother of Jesus, wrote this book. And he could have said, I am James, the brother of Jesus. And by the way, I'm a very influential member of the New Testament church of the early days. I was there for all the big events. But he doesn't. He says, I am a servant. I am a slave of Jesus Christ. He doesn't pull the family card. He doesn't pull the positional card. He pulls the only card that we all should have, is that we're servants of Jesus Christ. And he says he's writing to the dispersion. These are the 12 tribes he is mentioning. But a lot of these individuals were scattered because of persecution. And he's writing to them because they are no longer in touch with family. You can just imagine them as they are going through the difficult times. Grandmother is not there to hold the baby. The family, the parents are no longer there to assist them. That they are alone. They are feeling isolated. But instead of James coming along and saying, oh, poor pity you. Oh, I feel so bad for you. He writes some of the hardest verses in the entire New Testament. Instead of showing a ton of compassion for him, he essentially says, be thankful for what's happening to you right now. Let's look at what he says in James chapter 1, verse 2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Count it all joy? This is not a time for singing Be Happy in Jesus. This is not one of these happy clappy songs, one of these happy clappy verses that we have in the Bible. But he is saying this difficulty you're going through, you should be happy about this. You should be joyful. You should sing songs of praise to God because of the difficulties and the adversity that is affecting you at this time. That this is going to be different. But fortunately, James gives us the advice on how to be joyful in adversity. How to handle the difficult times. The first thing he says is you got to have this attitude of gratitude. You got to look for the diamond of positivity. A lot of times in life we go through difficult times, and there's probably a lot of people looking to be ministers. There's people who are ministering. And anybody who has experience knows what it's like to be in that congregation, and you just start to add up all the issues and problems in the church. And you start to dwell on it. You start to say, oh, I don't like my brother, elder, so-and-so. This deacon's all over me. This sweet sister is sweet to everybody about me and my wife. And if you start to dwell on that which is just negative, it'll start to overwhelm you. It'll eat you alive. Because you become so focused on that which is wrong that you miss that which is right. No church is perfect. But no church is not all bad either. There's always this blending of the two. There's good things and there are bad things. And James is saying when you are going through adversity, you've got to look for that which is good. Because if you don't, it will destroy you. Think about a marriage. You're married to this knuckle-headed guy named Michael, perhaps. And you're sitting there and he's not loving. He hasn't bought flowers for years. He hasn't done anything nice. He forgot the anniversary. And if you sit there and you dwell on that, that's all you'll think about. You become so depressed and so angry and bitter that you'll never have any joy. But you need to, in every relationship with one another, in your lives, with your friendships, you've got to find that which is trustworthy and praiseworthy. That which you can say, hey, at least he shows up to work every day. He always provides for me and my kids. He is a good man morally. He may not be romantic, but I know that he is always going to stand with me. You've got to find that which is praiseworthy. Maybe you're in a congregation and you're just becoming overwhelmed with some of the issues. You have to sit back and say, those elders, yes, sometimes I just think they're stuck and neutral. But you can say, they have always been good to me. They seem to be fair. They want to do what's right. You've got to look for that which is going to bring you the most joy. I remember when I was this heathen in Nova Scotia, there was this Church of Christ guy, and I didn't meet very many of them, only met 2. And he started coming to our school, and he got on this bus that I was on, and I said, David, you're on the wrong bus. He's like, oh no, I'm on the right bus. I said, trust me, I've been riding this bus longer than you have, and you're not on the right bus. Oh, I feel fine. I said, all right, suit yourself. He gets on it, and about a couple miles down the road, he goes, Matthew, I think I'm on the wrong bus. I said, I could have told you that. Wait, I did. He gets off it, and he has about a 20-mile walk home. This is before cell phones. And he just starts walking. I see him the next day at school, and I said, David, oh, that was miserable. How did you stand that? What did you do? He said, oh, it was just a great blessing. It was a huge blessing. I had 20 miles to pray to God. I got to have all that time uninterrupted in time of prayer. I sat there as a heathen. I thought, this guy is truly brainwashed. There is a major issue. He is on some Christian Prozac. I know he has to be on something. Because I'm sitting there thinking, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. You feel that you're happy about this? I would have got off that bus, stomped the whole way home, mad as could be. But he didn't. He fell into a trial. And he counted it as all joy. Because he looked for that which was praiseworthy in the situation. Now in the next 2 verses, he says now You have the attitude of gratitude, but you also are looking for the silver lining because he realizes that stress produces strength. Look what he says in James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. In America, we get so stressed out because of stress. We think stress is our enemy and it's just the awfulest thing in the world. It's going to kill you. But the reality of it is, stress produces strength. When you have more stress in your life, two things happen. It defeats you or you become stronger. That you're able to handle more. That God is molding you and refining you to become more of a leader in His kingdom. That you are becoming a better person who's able to handle more. Think about kids, they can't handle much stress. But as adults, we can handle more because we have slowly developed. God added more stress in our lives in order for us to become stronger in our lives. James says we can count it all joy because you are being matured in the Lord. You may be looking at becoming ministers and you're going to come to that point in every congregation where I'm sick of this place. I'm getting out of here. I can't take these people one more day because of this issue and this issue and this issue. And often we conjure up imaginary issues of why we don't like a place. But we start getting our minds focused on that because we don't have the right attitude. And the next thing you know, you feel like if I just go someplace else, all the problems will be washed away and it's going to be perfect. I have seen so many guys, I call it the 2-year buzz. They sit there and they go to a place. Oh, how's it going? Oh, I love it. These elders are the finest elders I've ever worked with. This membership is just the finest membership I've ever seen. I couldn't imagine being at a finer place. You see them 2 years after that. How's it going? I can't stand these elders. I don't like this place. There's more issues than I can ever imagine. Nothing has changed. Their attitude has, though. And so as you are in a work, there may be more stress. But remember, you're being prepared. You are being matured in Jesus Christ to handle even more work, to handle even more trials. You count it as all joy because God trusts you enough. He has empowered you enough for you to become a better person. It's like the principle of lifting weights. Now imagine if there was a guy named Michael and he would just go to the gym and he would grab the 10-pound weights every week. 10 pounds, I'm going to the gym. And let's say he was married to a Stacy, and he would brag to his wife and say, I'm going to the gym, Stacy, and I'm going to go lift some weights. And he grabbed the 10 pounds first week. Did it 10 times. Next week, 10 pounds again. One week, some other girl had the 10-pound weights and says, can I borrow them? And he just lifted those 10 pounds again. Every single week. If he did that every single week, he'd never get bigger. But if there's a guy named Matthew, and he started with 25 pounds, and he lifted those, and then he'd go to 30, 35, 40, and you would become stronger through time. That is how God prepares us. He allows us to have some extra stress so that we would become stronger for His purposes. I want to give you this little illustration. When we get stressed out, and we start to think about how awful our lives here is on earth, and we're looking at all this difficulty. It's kind of like this. A lot of times when we get really focused on the negativity in our lives, and we're not counting it at all joy when we fall into various trials, because we have lost perspective. If you look at this rope, you see that I have this little white section taped off. And the little white section represents our life. This is how long our life is. And then the rest could keep on going on for eternity, but you kind of get this image of how long eternity is. You are here on earth such a short and limited time. But we make all of our decisions and all of our perspectives come from this one little segment of our lives. This is why I was always so bad in youth ministry. Failure at that. Some girl would come up and say, "My boyfriend and I broke up." And I said, "Aw." I said, "How long did you date?" "A week." So I'd be like, "So you dated this one little speck and you're upset?" But they get upset because they don't realize how long eternity is. You are going through a difficult time in your congregation. And all congregations have ups and downs. And you get so focused, maybe your time here in this school, and you're like, "I just can't take it. I can't stay any longer. I got to quit. I just can't do this." But when you think about it, it's such a small little speck of time. But what are you doing here at this school? You are trying to develop yourself for eternity. And so when the teachers give you way too much work to do, and you're saying, "There's no way I can get through it." Really? They're trying to prepare you for ministry. They're trying to prepare you for the work that is going to be 10 times more difficult than any studying of a book. You know, you are sitting there studying a book, whining about it. And you're thinking, "There's no way I can do ministry. This is too hard." Really? Too hard? You got to sit there and read a book, and that's too hard. Wait till you get into ministry. They're trying to prepare you to see that you have a bigger perspective in mind. They are trying to add stress in your life so that you become stronger for the Lord. And so when you sit back and you think, "There's just no way I can handle this difficulty in my life or this trial," sit back and think how short it is really for eternity. Because God is a lot more interested in strengthening us and maturing us for eternity than He is keeping us happy here on earth. When you get into those difficult situations, and you may be in a difficult situation now, James gives these controversial texts because they are totally contrary to the way the world works today. The way the world works today is run away from your problems. God's way is you press into your problems. You press into your difficulties. You tackle your difficulties. And when you do it, even though you may say this may not make sense, but for eternity's perspective, it does. God has a plan for you. And so you press into them. And when you press in, don't press in with a bad attitude. James says press in and be thankful and joyous that you have that opportunity to do it. I hope this message blesses you in some way. Thank you for having me.